Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello and welcome everyone to the Tall and Short of It podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. Justin, good to see you for another fun episode. We've got a lot to talk about with the first race of the F1 season. I know you have some stuff on your mind with Magic. And, of course, we've got League of Legends getting towards the end of regular seasons into playoffs to head to MSI. So a lot to talk about. But how are you this week? How's life treating you?
Yeah, good to see you too. Like you said, big, well, not big, but a packed show this evening. We've got the first race, some Magic stuff, like you had said. But yeah, man, I'm doing pretty well. First of all, before we even get into anything, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of listeners. Tyler saying that Christian Bale is the GOAT Batman. I would tend to agree with him. There's some other good ones out there.
There are, but Christian Bale's definitely the best, though. But the that doesn't mean that the other Batmans are bad.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
He's the one and only, in my opinion.
All right.
And his. He would agree with me. And now it's 2 versus 1, so therefore we're right.
Okay. I guess I'll just take the L on that one.
Ooh, man. Starting off the show pretty fun here. And I just want to give a shout out to my friend Andy. We were squirreling and saying, hey, comment, like, talk to us, send a shout out. He did. We ghosted him. We didn't say anything. So, Andy, we'd like to apologize. And thank you for listening. And thank you for commenting. And as a whole, as a tall and short of it, we will do better. But, yeah, I just wanted to say that. But, yeah, looking forward to the show. Good to see you too, Aaron. Let's get into it. How'd your week? Give me your rose, thorn, and seed.
Definitely. So, week's been pretty good. My rose has just been that I've been getting kind of back into a little bit of a swing of exercising. I went for a run the other day. I've been doing some good stretching. I can touch my toes for the first time in who knows how long. So my flexibility has been increasing as I've been trying to stretch more. Still recovering from a couple of those basketball injuries that I mentioned, but like things are on the uptick. So it's been good physical fitness week for me. So that's my rose. My thorn, I don't really have too much for a thorn, so it's going to be pretty quick, but just I've had a bunch of weird nightmarish dreams lately that are just like, I don't typically dream like, or at least remember any dreams, but if I do, they are probably 98% just like bad or concerning or uncomfortable. So I've had a few of those in the past week or so, and that's just not too exciting to deal with, including ones where like I've woken up and then like tried to go back to sleep because it's like 4 a.m. and I'm like right back in it. So not ideal. But I mean, there are worse things in life. It hasn't really negatively affected like my feeling rested or anything. It's just like I wake up and I'm like feeling uncomfortable. So that's my thorn. So there are definitely worse things out there. My seed though is I'm looking forward a lot to this weekend. It is my birthday weekend, so I've got a couple of things planned with friends, which will be nice. And then we also have Colleen's brother and sister-in-law's baby shower for the baby that's coming in just a couple months. So looking forward to just having a nice weekend, being around some good people and celebrating things. So that's my my seed.
Honestly, forget that baby though, dude. It's your birthday weekend. What the hell?
Nah, I never make a big deal about my birthday, so it's not something that I'm super like hype about. Not for any in particular reason. I'm just like I'm getting a day older every day. What's that different about this day? But anyway, I am looking forward just to spending time with people. So it'll be a nice weekend overall. Looking forward to it. But that is my Rose, Thorn, and Seed. What have you had going on this past week for yourself?
Hold on, like
Whoa, whoa.
we don't got to rush here because I want to ask you about the dreams.
Ah,
Like
okay.
I'm no Freud. Like most of the time, I don't think you're supposed to care. It's just like data computing. But I think the one thing that I would ask is like, is there recursion? Is there like themes and things happening similarly?
Uh, to some extent, but
Ooh,
not really like themes or it's just the commonality between the majority of my dreams that are like not good or uncomfortable or whatever is
right.
that there is something that I'm trying to run away from. Like it's not always
Hmm.
like a fucking murder with a machete or like something crazy like that. It could just be like uh just like shady kind of figures that I can't really put like a face or but there's something about them that I'm trying to like get away and hide and like whatever. And it just always ends up with like them somehow figuring out where I am and then me like trying to run away. Lots of the whole like feeling like I'm running in molasses, like I can't really move quickly to get away from whatever it is.
Right.
But there's not any sort of significant like uh, cohesive thing that I'm like running from. It's not
Sure.
like I've like
It
like
sounds
it's
like the theme though is you running away from whatever it is. Have you like Googled that or talked to your therapist about that in the sense of like like what that represents? Is there like can you use that to look at something from your life? Like
I
I'll give you one example.
okay.
I was having recurring dreams about like specifically the frames of the dream that I would remember is like my teeth falling out into my hand. Like and they were bloody or dirty or something and I was like what the fuck is that? That's so weird. So I just googled it and a couple of the responses came back and said if that's recurring, is it is there something you've forgotten to do or are forgetting? Because that is like they've related that to forgetting something. I don't know how good sleep studies and dream studies are. I there just may be some insight that to be gained from knowing that the theme is you running away and the slowness in which you're running away.
Well, I think
Uh,
I haven't looked into it really because I honestly don't really feel too bothered. It's just more so like frustrated. Like it's typically just like maybe once in I don't know every few weeks or so that I'll like
okay.
remember a dream. It's just been this past week. It's been multiple times. So it was like out of the ordinary, and I don't really like waking up and kind of having that like uncomfortable feeling. I mean, I don't think anyone would, um,
No, it's pretty scary.
but like in general, I feel like I'm pretty good at addressing things that are going on in my life, like
Hmm.
through whether it's through therapy or through just like kind of conscious thought about like what I have going on and all.
Beating
Um,
people up.
exactly, exactly. So in general, I don't feel like it's anything that I haven't been concerned enough about the dreams to actually like look into it and be like, oh, like what's going on? Because I'm just like, I just have weird dreams sometimes, and like I just
Gotcha.
kind of move forward. Um, so it's something that honestly I wouldn't be surprised if there's some like relatable things out there. The slow moving thing though, I think that is just due to like the way from what I have read a little bit on that because I was more curious about that at one point in my past,
Okay.
and from what I understand, a lot of times that can just be attributed to the way that you are like laying, or if you're potentially like too like wrapped up maybe in the sheets or something that you actually physically would have difficulty moving like limbs and things like that.
Sure.
That it in your dream it kind of makes your limbs move more like slowly and like sluggishly because you're actually physically, and it could be like you're like laying cross-armed and so like you're trying to like fight and you can't like swing punches very quickly or anything, or you're different stuff like that. So I have read a little bit about that, just because I was curious at one point.
Yeah.
But also it could just be other things. It could be, I don't know. Could be, for all I know, it could be just something that I ate as like a snack before bed that's like affecting me weirdly, or
right.
Yeah. So
no, it's just interesting where like you're saying, oh, it doesn't really bother me, blah blah blah, but like here we are talking about it on the pod as your thorn.
Well, I did also preface it that I was, well, I did preface it with, I was like, I don't really have much of a thorn this week. Like, it's like, it's like more of an inconvenience. So, like, I haven't had too bad of a week overall. But it was just one of those things that I'm like, man, like, that happened multiple times. Like, that's, it's just, like, not ideal. But it's not, like I said, not the worst thing in the world, and I'm not torn up about it or anything. But maybe I have a little of looking at some online stuff to see if I can figure out something that, or I mean, hey, maybe
ask your therapist first. Google seems like an unreliable resource.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe there's something out there that has some sort of backing. Maybe I will just like read that thing and be like, that doesn't make any sense related to me, and I'm just back to like, it is what it is. But
right.
I mean, it couldn't hurt to just Google. I'm not a like jump to WebMD and be like, oh, I have a slight cough, I must have a tumor in my lung. Like,
right. So
I don't think I'm gonna overreact to whatever it may say.
I mean, talk to the village shaman, dude. He may have wise words for you after a peace ceremony and a
little side quest, and travel to the next town over, deliver this letter for me.
Yeah, and then he'll give you the secret.
Exactly.
Give you an XP for the level up.
Speaking of XP for the level up, just another side note: the new robot that we have, our robot Jamie. Getting hit with
level 1.
Yeah, getting hit with that little notification. I had no idea what that was about, but I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's a way for you to it shows your activity in the server, which I think is funny. We'll probably be the only ones, leveling up here. But then we'll be like the fucking end boss at the game. We'll be level 99 with the sick red banner and roll with the flaming sword and the dark armor. Welcome to the Discord.
Well, it's kind of cool that it like encourages engagement that way. I just thought that was kind of neat.
Time.
So. But
I reacted to it. I said, what up to Jamie? So yeah, we're out here leveling up, dude.
Hell yeah, I'm about it. But we backtracked onto my thorn and all. But now,
to be fair, I thought that was interesting. Normally,
no,
I don't care what you have to say, but that was interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, but now, it's fine. But. Now, for yourself, what have you had going on this past week? What's your rose, thorn, and seed for the people?
All right, so I'm actually going to get a little more serious here. I'll start with my thorn so I can have a little levity and be funny. Working with 2 clients and well, how should I say? So working with a client, there was somebody out in the hall who was just scrolling through TikTok, not with headphones in. So for the first 7 to 10 minutes of this massage, just right through the door, I was just hearing well, now you see then here we are. Whoa, check out. Just really loud fragments of sounds. I'm just oh no. Oh no. And I thought, I was going to have to like stop the massage, go out, say something like, "Hey, can you please not do that?" You know. And thankfully, out of the goodness of their heart, they turned it off and went to do other things. But yeah, I had this like confusion within me of like, I really got to put my foot down. This is crazy. This can't happen. But I gave the benefit of the doubt just long enough where it stopped and there was silence.
Well, so what do you mean by out in the hallway? Like, was it someone who was in your waiting room, like, kind of area, or like someone who has an office like close by that maybe they were just like hanging out outside on their smoke break or something? Or
No, it's like the waiting room outside of our office. I think it was just like I think it was like a client waiting for one of the other services that are down the hall.
gotcha. Okay.
And maybe it was like their time for the appointment or whatever. But yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, please, please, please turn that off. But yeah, so that was crazy, and just yeah, whatever. But my mind, like, I was fuming, because I'm not like
Well,
whatever.
well, no, I get it, because it's like I don't get fuming when I see it, but like I get annoyed, or at least like just I roll when I see people just like talking on speakerphone in public, and it's
Yeah,
typically like older people, and so I'm like, their hearing's probably not that great, so maybe, I don't know, whatever it is.
sure.
But like there's occasions where I'm like, there was one time a few months back that I was like, it was at my old job. I had to go pick up liquor for the clubhouse for our liquor order, and
Hell yeah.
I like was at the liquor store, and I unfortunately didn't get to go like earlier on in the day like I was intending to. So it was like 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I'm like in line just with everyone who's like getting out of work. And this dude is just like on FaceTime in the line talking about obscene kind of stories with like his homeboy or whoever it was about like, I'm like, this is too much. Like, how do people just not realize? So with me, I've like been in a relatable instance, but that is way worse. I would have been way more like irritated in that instance, because you're like also looking at how it reflects on your business, how it reflects on like the actual, like, can this person get relaxed enough for me to properly work on like their
They're
specific
hearing it, obviously.
right. Maybe you got to get a couple of pairs of like styrofoam earplugs or something.
Well, to be fair, like, on a more serious note, like, one of the upgrades for the office that we're thinking about is getting just like a thick ass door that we can put up, because effectively what we have is just like wooden paper that's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was just crazy. I don't want to harp on it too much. It was more funny than anything, because I was just like, are you fucking serious? Like, it was just insane. But all right, so I'll move on to like more positive things.
All right.
So I had a client schedule for it doesn't matter. I had a client schedule, and it was somebody who like I was looking forward to, because new clients are like, they're stressful and they're tough, and I just like always want to put my best foot forward, and so I may tend to overthink them or whatever. And so the day comes, I meet this client. She is just so nice, so sweet, just put me at ease right away. And it's funny when it's like the client puts me at ease, I'm supposed to hopefully be like putting them at ease. But I guess what I'm saying is like we kind of kicked it off and were friendly very easily.
Nice.
And but what was crazy was I knew I was never going to see her again. She said she was from somewhere else, just there for like the weekend, and was just looking for body work. And I was like, that's brutal then too. So it's like I get one chance,
Yeah.
and it went really well. Turns out she works in the industry as well, and we were conversing about like technique and what you think and blah blah blah. and there were so many moments where like she confirmed suspicions that I had, or like kind of like hang-ups about things like in massage. And there were so many times where we were sitting there in the chairs after the session where I was just like, yes, 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 I felt that, thank you. Like, no, I thought I was wrong. And just so many times, just back and forth, she was like, no, you're not wrong, like, that's okay. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Like, it was so reaffirming
Yeah.
for like, and for direct concerns that I was having, like literally the week and a half before, and we were talking about all of it, and she was just like, "No, no, you're fine." Like, basically, like, "Fuck them, fuck that. That's not cool." Like, "No, we do it this way." Yes, I love that, and we were just like commiserating so much, and so that was like huge. And I came out of that appointment just like, well, fuck yeah. Not that like I'm perfect and I don't need to improve and blah blah blah, but some of the worries that I was having were clearly unfounded, right? Like
Yeah.
I trusted, I believed what she was saying,
Well, and
and it
that's
was just
something
like super
that's
sick.
that's something that's really hard to like figure out. I feel like in an industry like yours anyway, because for one, you're working with so many individual people, and everyone has like
Variations of the same.
a different need for why they are coming to see you. So you're not going to have a ton of recurring like same exact kind of thing in general. Plus, every single person is just different. Like, that's just another variability that really, like, people's temperaments. Some people have higher pain tolerance. Some people are more frustrated with whatever the situation that has caused them to come see you is, or like whatever. And like that validation of like reaffirming, like you said, your kind of thoughts and things on that is much harder, I feel like, to come by in your industry, because it is a smaller, more specialized like industry. Like
Sure.
when I worked in hotels, I could find fucking people all over the place to that I could be like, "Oh yeah, this person did blah blah blah," and they're like, "I've had someone that do that." But there's also tons of hotels everywhere. There's tons of people that have worked in service industries that are at least like very close to that like industry in general. Where because it's just not as specialized. And so I feel like finding someone who can relate as closely as that person could to like you and your experience is like harder to come by. So I'm sure that was even more like refreshing to kind of hear.
Oh, very much so. And so yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it was a great whatever 2 hours. And it was funny because at the end of it, I was like, it's so weird because I feel like we're like good friends at this point, and you're like, and I'm never gonna see you again. We were just like laughing about that. She's like, sometimes that's just how it works. I was like, I know, it's crazy. So she left. I think she was very pleased. So that went really well.
Nice.
And then my rose. I was talking with just just people in general, and having conversations about like what it means to like really pick things apart, and how do you really set something up, and sometimes the real work and rigor that it takes to just do like the foundational infrastructural things that are like almost like banal and boring, and like almost feel like not the important stuff, but actually learning that the systems that you use and the bedrock of those systems, like why you use them, what the to use a Lex Friedman term, your like foundational principles. I don't think that's what he would call it, but yeah, like your foundational principles and why you have them, and just talking about that and kind of reconnecting in a way, and maybe getting them to understand a little more about like my side of things and how I think about problems and issues, and I really think we came together and like maybe got some understanding. So I think that was really fun. But it's really tough, like when you learn that words are so like almost useless in some scenarios where you're trying so hard to just put the right string of them together and you can feel you're really close but you're just not hitting like the idea that you're trying to get at. So yeah, they are fickle little bitches, but yeah, I just think there was some good shit that happened. So that was all positive stuff.
Very cool. Always
Yeah.
good to connect and kind of. I think that's like a big part of um, why, like for instance, I really prefer if I'm talking about something that's like uh, that I find important. I prefer talking either like in person or like on the phone or something because
Mm,
like just typing out a string of words into a text message just doesn't always convey what you're looking to.
right.
And you can also like get instantaneous feedback on like whether what you said hit the mark or whether it made like no sense at all, and you can clarify and things. And so like having that yeah, that connection is it's a cool thing. So
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So pretty interesting rose, thorn, and seeds here for the week here, but and this is the conversation I've been itching to get to, but we've obligated ourselves to do the rose, thorn, and seed. But the F1 race, the Bahrain 2022 Grand Prix, was, in my opinion, super exciting. I kind of loved every minute of it. It was a lot of fun. I think it delivered on a whole lot of points that the rules committee was working towards. That's my initial take. Aaron, let's get into it.
yeah, absolutely. So first to kind of get go back to the top of everything, we had an announcement from the new race director for F1 before the race that the track limits were going to be heavily monitored, that they were the white line is the edge of the track. It's not the curb, it's not anything else. It's the white line. And so I appreciated like the simplistic clarity that they gave just right at the top. Because I think that that has been one of the most vocally like outspoken things from the F1 community and viewership and fans and all over the past year was that there were so many things that were happening that just didn't have a good explanation or inconsistencies and things like that. And I think that like kind of laying the law down like right as the new race director comes in and all to just be like, hey, this is how it's gonna be, listen up, follow the rules and everything. I was like, I appreciate that because
Hmm.
now I have an expectation of like what they're going to be doing, what they're looking for, what they're keeping an eye on, as opposed to just being like, well, who knows? This race, maybe it's fine to go off the track, and next race, who knows what they're going to say there. I feel like they've taken from the experience that they had last year, especially, and have kind of moved forward, leading us into this. I agree with what you said. Very exciting Bahrain Grand Prix. So getting into it, we had a pretty interesting qualifying. I thought that it was very surprising kind of how things shook out for a lot of different drivers.
Hmm.
So from your perspective, what were kind of your standout like things or drivers from qualifying initially that kind of caught you maybe by surprise or that like exceeded expectations maybe?
I think overall, Mick Schumacher exceeded expectations, and Valtteri Bottas exceeded my expectations anyway. Those were so just thinking of where these teams were previously, their quali positions were kind of off the map, where for some of the other teams and cars and drivers, they were hitting marks that you would, regardless of new rules and regs and whatever, you would kind of expect them to be at that point. But I think Alfa Romeo at the beginning of the season was a big question mark, and Haas was a big question mark. Now, I know at the test we had seen some really, really good just showing from the Haas car and the drivers with Magnussen and Mick Schumacher, but they were able, as a team, to put it all together in qualifying. Mick made it through. That's Q2, and I'm pretty sure Magnussen was through to Q3. I think he started 6th on the grid.
7th.
7th. Okay, fair enough. But that is like far, far and above what they were expecting and then consequently doing last year. And we all know the fucking no development story, but they really, really showed up to the first race this year. And Valtteri, I think, big question marks with Alfa Romeo. They were like back of the midfield. And he outqualified George Russell, his replacement, and was sitting on the grid right next to Lewis Hamilton, his teammate last year. So I think Valtteri was given a good weapon, and he can still obviously nail a lap.
Yeah, I thought that his performance was really solid. Another one, and so I'll say another positive one that I saw before I get into the ones that kind of surprised me the other way, was Alex Albon coming back in, not having raced for a season, making it into Q2 with the Williams car that Nick Latifi was starting from P20 in. So out qualifying his teammate, which is always like kind of the priority for drivers, or their first priority is beating their teammate, and the next is beating as many people as they can. So that was cool to see, because I think Alex Albon is a good driver. So I'm excited that his return to F1 went pretty solidly for him from the get-go. From looking at drivers that it was a little less exciting for, I mean, the fact that the McLarens for the main part were as low as they were in qualifying, starting P13 and P18 after we thought that they looked really solid, at least in some of the testing and everything. I think that was a big surprise and all for us. The other one that was that disappointed me a little bit from quali was Yuki. Honestly, Yuki didn't make it out of Q1. I know the AlphaTauri is not, I think, quite as initially competitive as it was last season in terms of where it was on the grid. But I was expecting with Yuki's, like, with his practice, with his first year in F1 coming into his second year, I just expected a little bit more out of that. He could get a little more out of the car. He didn't miss out by very much, but he did get beat out by a rookie, Zhou Guanyu, in the Alfa Romeo to make it for Zhou Guanyu to make it into Q2 past him. So the Alfa Romeo, though, did show itself to be a faster car than the AlphaTauri this weekend, so it's not 100% like driver situation, but I for whatever reason I just expected Yuki to have a little bit better of a leg up from the get-go than he did this week.
Well, and I think moving forward, we should see better quality results. If I understood the weekend properly, I think that was his flying lap in Q1 was the first lap that he had done all day. So I'm pretty sure there were problems in free practice 3 where he wasn't able to run at all. So I'm pretty sure that was like his first time in the car that day.
Okay.
So tough for him, but I believe it was more of an engineering issue than a Yuki issue.
Gotcha. Makes a little more sense then. I didn't realize that from the the FP3 and everything for that.
That's what I'm here for, man. I catch all of it.
I appreciate
I never
it.
sleep.
So.
But yeah, man, Yuki, he did do better in the race. He gained 6 positions, I think, which is really impressive. So yeah, didn't do so hot in qualifying, but yeah, where did Pierre start? Was he was
Pierre?
Up,
he was P10, so not
okay,
crazy far up, but he did make it into Q3 and all. So definitely, I think the Alfa Romeo is a slightly better car, but yeah, hopefully we'll continue to see Yuki's growth through this year like we did last year. He's a fun, talented young driver to watch, so I always kind of have my eye on him and how he's performing. But to get into the race itself, we did have a little craziness at the top of the table from qualifying in terms of, I think, what from what we had last year with Leclerc taking the pole, the Ferrari being back in good form. It just wasn't that competitive to really be able to do that consistently last year. And I think the one pole that I think it was just the one pole position at Monaco that Leclerc got last season that he was I won't say he was going to. There were cars that were going faster than he was on their flying laps for the final lap of quali when he crashed and got red flagged for... Right.
Yeah, he put it in the wall on purpose so they couldn't finish the lap.
Now they did it on purpose, but that was the only time that they, if I'm remembering correctly, got a pole this past season. And with that... Right. With that being said, like, I don't think that they would have if he hadn't crashed. I think Max and Lewis were both on faster flying laps than what he had put down. So it was nice to see the Ferrari back in really good form. Seeing Leclerc P1, Sainz P3, that was awesome because they both are really talented drivers, and now they have a piece of machinery that can also compete at the top of the table. So it's gonna make it interesting for this year. We might have a 3-team race for the constructors, depending how some things shake out as the season progresses. So.
Yeah, they looked really strong. I think their vehicle looked the most stable on the track, especially in qualifying, and their pace was really ridiculous.
Phenomenal.
And it looks really good too. Like I love the way it's scooped down. I love the fucking gills in it, which turned out a bunch of teams adopted those gills. That's like whatever, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, continuing on, the start of the race was A, better than last year, but B, interesting in the sense that we could talk about some of the individual drivers, but at the back of the field, what I thought was crazy, from Albon back, it looked like there was some big jumble that happened on that first turn, and that just split the field, like wide open, where you had like X runners up ahead, and then Albon back, everybody was just backed up and,
I think that was
shucking.
I think that was a little bit because of Ocon hitting Schumacher. Right at the start, so that kind of made everyone dodge, and then Albon ended up just making it through to be like kind of the lead of that group for a bit, just by making it through pretty unscathed, and because of that, like, he ended up, I think, splitting that by just holding up a lot of people. So that was interesting, but we did see a couple of different drivers have a really tough start. We saw Checo Perez drop back, I think, 2-3 places right at the start. We saw Valtteri drop from P6 where he started down to, I think, P13 or something like that. Like, really, really dropping back and getting a bad start. Mick getting tapped was unfortunate, but that correction on that that little 360. He did a pirouette and just like kept going. That was beautiful.
You could see on the onboard, his hands were like going crazy when he was like getting it back on the track. But yeah, man, he didn't miss a beat, and he was able to finish the race. So that was pretty fun. But two drivers that got off the line really well. Those two Mercedes were quick.
Yeah.
When you got the bird's eye view of the start, literally George Russell, it felt like, was moving up the grid before anybody else was even moving.
Yeah.
They were so fast. It was crazy.
Well, they got a great start, and I think that's something that I feel like Lewis and George both have been pretty solid at. Like George in the Williams as well I felt like put in some pretty decent first laps. And when he was in the Mercedes filling in for Lewis the other year, I felt like he had a really good start that race as well and kind of got a good jump. So I feel like that is one of their driver skills that they have as well a little bit. But they really did get a nice jump right from the get-go, and kind of were off and running pretty quickly. But the Ferraris, Max, kind of were able to stay out in the front there. And it became a pretty interesting race in my opinion. I was really feeling like it was a exciting race throughout. I felt like some people, I saw some criticism online about like the race and all, more so the cars and how the regulations didn't do what they wanted to. I disagree fully. I thought that the change in regulations allowed for a lot more exciting head-to-heads, and you could see that there's a lot more of consistent kind of gaps from person to person, because you weren't seeing like 2-3 cars just pull away further and further and further ahead. Like it was like, okay, even at the end, like there were teams that were like, I don't think I can stop to go for tires for the fastest lap, because if I stop, I could lose a place and not be able to make it up. Like the gaps were so like small. Like they were not like right on top of each other where there were gaps, but they were small enough that it did make it interesting for those kind of like pit decisions, undercuts, things like that throughout the race. And I think that is going to leave, for the rest of the F1 season, it's going to leave a lot of things up to racecraft, because we have some cars that seem to be at a pretty similar level as of right now. And just to speak on one that I was really, really impressed with from Leclerc with Ferrari, I mean, he was battling with Max for a bit. Max was really getting after him, and to see him do things, and for instance, there was one point where you can see the driver. I saw Will Buxton retweeted Formula One's tweet of Leclerc in the car. He was only going up to 7th gear instead of 8th on those long straights when Max was getting DRS and got past him, almost in like to intentionally allow Max to get past him so that he could clip the DRS on the next short straight and get right back ahead for the rest of the lap. And he did it. I mean, he did it 3 laps in a row. Yeah. It was, first off, a phenomenal battle with really, really good, clean racing that I think, hoped that we would see going into this year after some of the craziness we saw with last year's championship battle. So not only did they not crash or have any sort of dangerous moments, but that was impressive. Leclerc is like, when he has a good car underneath him, that man is a just phenomenal driver. And seeing just the fine details a little bit of all the decisions that the drivers are making and everything to give themselves that competitive advantage and to work on their racecraft to like win a race. I was like, that's pretty cool to see, and to get to see it in such a clean racing environment too.
Well, and just to continue on that, that little skirmish that they had, it was a clever driving from Leclerc. Like, he said as much after the race about, just allowing him to get the overtake, and he knew he would have the DRS afterwards. But we also got to see it went on long enough where we got to see an unforced error from Max with the lockup, and then like that kind of toasted his chances right there.
Yeah.
For that particular skirmish. Obviously,
Right.
there may have been opportunities afterwards, but it's fun to be in a position where the racing does come down to that, like you were saying, racecraft, where it wasn't just, oh, he got DRS, he got by him, and then he's gone because of the dirty air, like, where it's effectively, it feels like you pass the person and you're like gas bombing them. You're like, all right, bam, now you're just like out of the race, like you're gone.
Like a boat that gets hit by someone's wake, like as it's in there, and all of a sudden it's just like full, like just
like, well, where's the competition in that?
Yeah.
And so it was refreshing to see them be able to battle back and forth and have to use, like you were alluding to, a little bit of skill expression to continue on and, like, to use his words, manage his race then.
Definitely. And I think that we will continue to see some of those, I'll call it a forced error, because he was being put under pressure by Leclerc, or Max was being put under pressure by Leclerc in those battles and all once he had gotten the lead, which kind of led to him locking up and everything. And, like, I think that's kind of an exciting part of us having new cars that have, like they were talking about at multiple points. We saw Nico Hulkenberg stepping in for Seb Vettel this week because Seb tested positive for COVID. And seeing the fact that Hulk had been out of a car for such an extended period, like I think 18 months or so since he had driven in F1, he was missing brake points consistently. And I think that because of the way the cars are, the way that you have to go slower through the tight corners and everything, we're going to continue to see some different like errors like that throughout the season that could come into play in those tight battles, because we're seeing these drivers who have driven the same track year after year after year with certain break points that have been so consistent, and all of a sudden those things are changing. It's like the muscle memory of, oh, I can brake here and I'm fine. That stuff is not necessarily the way these cars are anymore with the new regulations and the changes. So I think that we will probably end up seeing some different drivers. I mean, I think Ricardo as well had a couple of different mistakes that he similarly made, not being able to have really much practice leading up to this race weekend. Mm-hmm. So I think that some of that stuff will continue to see throughout the year, and it's a mixture of pressure from other drivers or pressure to perform along with that new car that you're adjusting to and kind of getting a feel for this the differences that these cars have.
Gotcha. So you're giving Max more the benefit of the doubt there.
Oh, I think that Leclerc put him under a lot of pressure. Like they were doing it to each other, and Max made the mistake. Leclerc didn't. Leclerc definitely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's an unforced error.
No, I felt like it was forced. I think that if Leclerc had made a mistake in that situation, it's forced because you have the other person putting them under pressure to call it. Like an unforced error, in my opinion, would be if Max is like no one near.
Air.
Yeah, Max has no one near him, nothing, and then he just locks up around a turn and flat spots his tire because of like, oh, he just fucked up. Like when you have another driver there pressing you, you're also considering, I'm sure, like, oh, are they going to try and like take the inside line? I have to watch out for their car. They're like, maybe they're going to go inside out on me on this turn. And like, so those I consider, like, I related it kind of to like tennis where that unforced errors is like a common like stat in tennis where it's just about like the person just legitimately just hitting a bad shot compared to if they're like scrambling to make a save and fuck up because of it. So
gotcha. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like, all credit to Leclerc though, because he was being put under a lot of pressure by Max in pretty similarly competitive cars, and he was able to like not only keep the lead but be able to fight through it and then push that lead out further and further, even being undercut multiple times, giving Max the opportunity to come back and all in the race. He just really drove a phenomenal race, so that was super impressive.
Well, that's kind of another element of the race I wanted to talk about that I'm not sure really factored into much last year is the tire warm-up. Like, you heard Max on the radio say, like, oh, you know, I could have been ahead of him. What am I doing babying these tires? You saw Lewis kind of skidding out a little bit. And so I think there's something to be said for that period right after the pit stop where it may become more of a talking point than it has been previously, where there were a couple of like close post-pit moments, but it felt like their tires were always warmed up. They always had the grip. So yeah, it was interesting to see that be a point of concern for the racers and factor in.
Well, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a race-to-race thing depending on track layout to some extent too, because a big part of that, like on some tracks, it won't matter that the tires are a little colder because you maybe don't have as sharp of turns or as many turns like right out of the pits. But when you have those turns that are so quick and the tires you haven't had any time to do a little like initial weaving or anything like that to try and get a little extra temperature in. I think that with how slow the slow corners are compared to last year, they are much slower going through those tight corners. It's going to be way more difficult to get the tires heated up before you hit those points to be able to get a little bit of grip. So I think we'll see a lot of people looking for the undercut in different situations. I think that could come into play a lot. The other thing that I was interested in, and this is something that I would have to double check myself on, but I believe they were using the 3 hardest compounds of tires from Pirelli, and we saw a like 3-stop race for a number of drivers, and that makes me really, really curious about what we're going to see moving forward throughout the season. Because if your 3 hardest tires are having deg that's causing you to have that many pit stops, I am just very interested to see, because the hardest tires should not be degrading that much. Like, everyone was expecting this to be probably a 1-stop, maybe a 2-stop if you're on an off strategy kind of race, and we saw so many drivers putting in 3 stops. I mean, we saw almost the entire grid on a 3-stop, if not everyone.
Yeah, well, how many many races last year did Mercedes do a one stop, and in the last 10 laps we're hearing like, "Oh, Lewis, can you push them to the end?" "Yeah, I can do it." And then, they're all fucking heroes for pushing these tires to the end. I think there is something to be said about more exciting races happening if there's more pit stops. So maybe that factored in with the design of the tires or whatever. But what we do know about Bahrain is, as a track, is that it's one of the what would they say? The abrasiveness of the track material is high, causing high tire degradation.
Yeah.
So it may change depending on some of the other tracks we're at. But that is a good point to bring up, that we did see 3 stops for a lot of the teams. But I think there's something to be said for the quality of races that we get due to that.
Oh yeah, I think
it just leaves room open.
Oh, I think it changes up a lot of things, but it also makes it more of a team thing to some extent. F1's a very, very, very big team sport, even though it doesn't always seem like it from just the initial viewership. You kind of look at it as the drivers, but the amount of information and feedback and all that you're getting from the pit wall, and then the pit stops themselves are hugely important, and the speed that you can get your guy back on the track for that. So I think we are going to see a lot of that come into play, and those 4 or 5 tenths of a second difference in a pit stop could be a huge factor, especially when you have 2, 3, maybe, who knows, maybe 4 pit stops in a race, depending on what track you're at. 5 tenths of a second, because your pit crew's slower, can add up to 1.5, 2 seconds, which can be a huge amount when it comes to beating your rival on the track. Yeah, absolutely. So
damn, no, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so the teams are really going to have to continue to be really on point. I know they get tons of practice doing it and all, but that's going to be a thing of note for myself, at least, to keep an eye on going forward, because I really didn't expect there to be that many pit stops and all in that race. And so that was a nice little pleasant surprise that shook things up a little bit more. As I was watching, which I enjoyed. So
yeah, and on the note about pit stops, I was trying to get a sense of, because the 1.8 always sticks in my mind from Red Bull, and so I was keeping an eye, and it seemed like the average was somewhere around 3.1. But notably, we had 2.5s both from, I think, Red Bull and Ferrari. So, but even though they are quicker, it seemed like there was a lot of variation in the pit stops. There were some really long ones where things weren't going so well. So I think the pit teams need a whole lot more practice, because I just say all that to say you're right. It could end up costing a race at the end of 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, and with the new tires and the new I think there's some changes that they've made to wheel caps and stuff like that that are slowing things down slightly. So every little bit and every I don't know, perfect nut gun placement makes a big difference, whatever you call that thing. What's the
perfect nut gun as seen on TV?
Yeah, the perfect. Yes, exactly. That's not gonna go well for me. So moving on, just to look at kind of the breakdown of how things ended up for the race. Breakdowns. We had.
Hold on. We're about to glaze over the most important part, where and I haven't prefaced you about this, but during the race, when Pierre Gasly's engine cut out, he pulls off to the side of the road, he gets out, the thing lights on fire, and one of the marshals comes over with a fire extinguisher.
Okay.
Marshal number 2 hands another fire extinguisher to continue putting out the flame. And at first watch, I didn't see this at all. When I went back to watch the highlights of the race, I caught it where it looked like a loss of continuity moment in a movie where literally one of the marshals is like standing like kind of behind Pierre Gasly, as he's just like kind of staring at the car, just meandering very slowly behind that little thing. And there's a marshal that like he's waiting for Pierre Gasly. He crosses behind that little metal barrier, and my man takes off like a lightning bolt. And I have no idea where he's going. The fire is already out. Gasly is safe. And this guy just takes off running. But the next clip you see, he's standing right back in position, like just behind the wall. So you're like, where did you go?
Are you sure it's the same guy?
I'm 100% sure it's the same guy.
Do you think he was running for another extinguisher in case of, like...
Yeah, I mean, he was doing his job, obviously.
No, but like...
It just looked so funny where, like, the pace at which he was running told me, like, he was gone. He was leaving the stadium. He was going to call 911. He was getting somebody on the phone. But the very next, like, clip of it, he was, like, standing back looking very alert. Like, my man, you didn't go anywhere. It looked really weird, and it was hilarious. And I literally spent, like...
I missed that.
Howling with laughter.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that, because I completely missed that.
It looked like a moment of, like, fucked up editing in a movie. Well, it was hilarious.
Because I like was watching, and so what I noticed when that happened was that I just wanted the second marshal who was there with another extinguisher to just start hitting the engine at the same time as the other guy. Put the fucking fire out faster.
Oh, no, one extinguisher at a time.
The one guy's up front just hosing it down, and the other guy's just standing there in the back like, I'm ready.
Yeah, like ready to hand it.
And I'm like, bro, no, just like... both of you should be hosing that fucking car down. Like,
yeah, it was a ridiculous little moment there.
That was quite a barbecue that he had going at the back of the car there. So definitely interesting, and to see not one, not two, but three Red Bull engines.
Honda power engines. Oh, no, you're right. Red Bull power engines. Sorry.
Red Bull powertrain. Go out during this race. I was I think a little bit of a concern looking at the rest of the season. I mean, more than a little bit. I did see today though, and so I do have to bring it up. But Helmut Marko came out and said that the issue, at least with Checo and Max's cars, appeared to be the same kind of issue. Essentially, it sounds like there was some sort of mechanical issue with maybe like a siphon for the fuel to the engine, and there got to be like some sort of vacuum that basically stopped fuel flow to the engine. So they ran out of fuel without like running out of fuel, like the
brutal.
So that seems to be what the issue was, at least in terms of like Checo's car conking out and him spinning because he had no power, and then Max with his car conking out as well, other than Max's like issue with his steering, whatever that was, like most likely a hydraulic issue with the powertrain or something like that. But just to see three of those cars have issues initially off the first race, after having the one of the most competitive cars on the grid last year, and like drivers'
in quality
champion,
and in testing, like they looked just really good up until they just turned off.
And testing, they put in a ton of laps. Like I do think that from what I read about Helmut Marko's statement, he felt comfortable saying that it was an issue that they could resolve for this upcoming race. So it's good that they have at least like diagnosed it and all. But you're starting off on a huge back foot to now Ferrari and Mercedes, who are able to go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Lewis getting the podium, like,
Yep.
come on, man! Like, not only do both of their cars shut off, but that gives Lewis the podium then too. It's like, oh, okay, sick, thanks, dude. It's like, no, that's crazy.
But with all that happening, we did have some other like kind of cool things that happened. I mean, we have Kevin Magnussen up in P5. Really awesome performance from the Haas car. It wasn't just a solid one lap that they put in during quali that got K-Mags up really high for the start. So we not only saw that, we also get to see Zhou Guanyu get a point in his first ever F1 race, which is just that's not common. Like that is a real cool moment for him. And for him to come into F1 and put in a really solid, consistent performance to even be in contention to be up there near that points place and let alone get his first point, that's super exciting to see. And then Mick right outside the points in P11. He was one spot out at the end. So lots of excitement, I think, throughout the season. I love how closely the cars can follow each other, and I think that will create for some really good fights throughout the season and battles on the track. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think the technical regulation changes and everything are going to be a really pleasant surprise in making the racing some pretty consistently competitive. So
yeah, it definitely seemed like it. What was interesting, and I don't know, we'll keep an eye on it. I don't know if this was just for this track or if it'll be consistent moving forward, is the DRS seemed to be worth a whole heck of a lot. Like, they seem to be fucking moving with that DRS flap open. So like that was just kind of sick. Like, it felt like each of the cars had a booster button, which that's effectively what it is, but it really was noticeable.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I think it's a combination of the DRS doing what it has always done, but also the ability for the cars to follow closer, because you can get a stronger slipstream so much easier if you can be right behind the car in that pocket where the air just continues to flow around you, that you can really just like, it is like you're fucking hitting the NOS button and just hammering it past people on the straight. So yeah, I think that will be consistently showing up throughout the season as well. So that's going to be very exciting to see how teams can utilize that. And I think that's also another one of those skill expressions of drivers being able to follow super close but safely behind another car to give themselves that little jump. So,
or use multiple DRS detection zones to their advantage. Like, there's 3 at Bahrain, and that I think that specifically, just like that aspect of Bahrain that is unique to that and some other tracks, I think 3 DRS zones is just like really exciting. You know, they have multiple chances for the overtake, or if, you know, in Charles Leclerc's case, if they get overtake and he has another shot. So that was really fun. The only last thing I wanted to say about the race, and this is just like to point out my own bias and my own douchebaggery, when Checo spun out, the camera angle that was on them was as such that when Lewis was going by him, I literally like sat up on the couch and I was like, did he just tap him to like
No.
I was like, what the fuck?
No, because the camera angle was really bad there, because I was sitting there and you also are hearing the commentary go, there's no way he just spun like that on his own. Like, so it was.
That's why I thought he got hit.
So it was not just us. It was like, I think everyone. I was waiting, like sitting on the edge of my seat watching for the replay to be like, what the hell happened? Because the cars don't typically just do that, especially not on fresh tires coming right out of a safety car and all. So that definitely caught me off guard a little bit as well. But I think it caught the commentators off guard. It caught everyone. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily your bias. It's just like, just so happened that Lewis was the closest guy behind him. If it was anyone else, right? If it was Ocon behind Schumacher at that point, I would have been like, did Ocon hit him again?
Right. But yeah, it's just like, of course it was, the Mercedes and the Red Bull. And I was like, dude, what the hell, man? This is insane. But yeah, that ended up being a non-issue. Whatever, it was the a power concern.
Yeah.
But yeah, just overall, we had. If you were going to hit the podium, we had Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz 2, and Lewis Hamilton number 3. Yeah. And it was a really exciting race. I think a great kickoff to the season. And I'm just excited for this weekend coming up in Saudi Arabia. I'm pretty sure it's the Jeddah circuit this weekend.
It is.
So just really looking forward to it. Hopefully. Now, we may get some updates, but I know we had some concerns from last season. But maybe we'll see, was it a rules thing? Was it we'll see. But I'm really excited to get back to that track. I think it was pretty fun.
Yeah, me too. I think it'll be very exciting. It's got a lot of good straights and also fast corners. And so, like, one of the things with the new cars and regulations, the slow corners are slower, but those fast corners, they're able to take them, or they're supposed to be able to take them like kind of flat out a little more easily. So I think we'll get to see that a bit this weekend. So very exciting for the upcoming race. But before we move past F1, I do want to bring up one thing and just get your a quick take on it from you. So it was announced today that F1 could potentially go to a 30 Grand Prix season. I think that's too many races personally. Trust me, I love F1. I love seeing a lot of good races. I love seeing all of it. It's exciting. It's fun. So the F1 boss, new boss, Stefano Domenicali, said that Las Vegas and Africa could both have races. Says that 30 Grand Prix season would be possible due to the level of interest in the sport. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that there is a lot of interest and viewership that's growing in all for F1 because I love it. I love more people getting on board and wanting to watch racing. I love it, so I hope that other people can enjoy it just as much as I do. Mm-hmm. I think 30 races is too much. I think if you are seeing that much interest in all these different locations, for one, like, you just need to get on a better rotational schedule and just have, in my opinion, have tracks that maybe you go there every other year. Maybe the contract doesn't say you're going to this place every year for the next 5 years. Maybe you go every other year for the next 10. You keep the tracks that are having the most consistent, most consistent viewership in terms of like them being historical tracks or them being like exciting to watch or whatever on every year, but then just mix things up.
Well, are you thinking from like a burnout perspective?
Burnout and dilution to some extent. The more and more races doesn't mean that you're going to have more good races. That could just mean that you have more races where you throw 5 extra races onto the season, and they're just 5 boring races where you're just like, well, we did it because there's money from this city to have a race here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
yeah, that's not a good reason to do it, I don't think.
If you're just increasing the races because, like, you want to have more or you can get more TV viewership money or whatever, that doesn't mean it's good quality. And I think that overall brings down the excitement and, like, intensity of the season. I mean, 23 races I think is a lot. And that's still, like, you have races throughout the season where people are just kind of like, meh, that was kind of boring. Like, throwing more on doesn't really, like, mean that they're going to be good.
No, and if anything, I think there's a world where less races and try and sell the mystique of them more. I think overall I'm in the camp of quality over quantity.
Well, yeah.
But there is a fine line somewhere in there. In the conversation of burnout for the drivers, just thinking this came up, what about having like 2 drivers per car? So then there was like a sub option where, Lewis could take off the US stint and have, Zhou Guan Yu do those. But then you're like, well, if Lewis isn't racing, then nobody's fucking watching the race anyway. So why have it?
Well, I think that
all sorts of stuff.
That kind of thing, in my opinion, makes the drivers' championship pointless to some extent. Because if someone wants to win the drivers' championship, then they're going to be like, no, I'm racing every single week just because I want these points for me. I want it, like, it's and that's the way it's going to be. And then that's going to force other people who are in competition to potentially win. So the top drivers are going to end up being the ones getting burnt out the most because they're going to be forced by the drivers' championship to do it, because they'll be like, oh, Lewis is taking a break this week. Like, I got to race so I can make sure that I can get, like, my leg up in points and everything.
Right.
And I think that the concept of, like, if you're going to have more races, space it out over more drivers. Maybe if you do that, if you do something like that, you have to implement rule changes, and it will end up playing more like mind games and fuckery with things where you're like, oh, like, maybe, yeah, there's 30 races for the season, but each driver can only drive in a maximum of 25. So then it comes this little chess game of like, oh, well, like, they can race this one and that one and, like, move things around.
Yeah, like the engine, take a new engine. What weekend do you do that kind of stuff? But yeah, no, I agree. I think it begins to become a different format when you start fucking with things like that. There's likely a critical mass of races, and it's probably 24, 25.
That's kind of where I think it has to kind of cap at.
Yeah, and to be fair, we're probably clueless. It may work up to X amount. Who knows? But, I mean, we're already almost at, like, one race every other weekend. Like,
yeah.
Even though it's front-loaded on, one side of the calendar with a bunch off, like, it's a lot already.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't think that's for us to decide, but I think overall I'm quality over quantity.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. So I was just curious. I didn't think you had seen that because it was fresh news that I saw this morning. So I appreciate the input because I think we're on the same train of thought with that. But to move forward a little bit, getting into some League of Legends and everything. Your hoodie, man. What team is that?
Looks like T1.
That's T1? I heard that they went undefeated this season in the regular season for LCK.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did okay.
Yeah, so perfect split from SKT, putting that down in the LCK, and not only that, But with the best of 3 series that they have in the LCK, this was a stat that I caught watching their series. They ended up plus 29 in terms of their win-loss record. They went 36-7. And the other teams previously who have gone plus 29 on the schedule were SKT T1 back in, I believe it was 2015. And then I believe it was Gen G when they also, so both teams that went plus 29 in the LCK won the World Championships that same year. I believe Gen G was the other team. So,
That's an interesting stat.
yeah, very interesting. Like, just, I think probably just very, like, random or coincidental.
Yeah, sure, but if T1 does it again, then it's a three-peat. Then it's something.
Yeah, so I mean,
2 is a small sample size. 3 is what's going on here?
well, I mean, going plus 29 on games in a regular season, I think just means that you're a really good team.
Yeah.
But yeah, the performance from SKT, and in particular in that matchup that they had at the end of the split against Dragon X, was really, really just impressive throughout. I enjoyed watching a lot of their games as I was going back and kind of catching up with LCK because I was not watching those games live at whatever weird time of the day they were.
Yeah, that's so tough.
But seeing like just the consistently solid performances that they put out, Faker breaking out picks like the Vigar in game 2 of that series. I was very impressed because I think a lot of people didn't have an expectation of this SKT team being as dominant as they ended up being. This T1 team, not SKT. But I think that there was some expectation for them to be like good, but not dominant like they were throughout the season. So.
Yeah, and they played really well. I mean, that's just stating the obvious. But I think as a team with a bunch of rookies, I think they developed their style really well, kind of, and maybe even in some aspects outside of the meta. Obviously, they're playing powerful picks and whatnot, but it seemed like they were really winning games in their own way. And as you were saying, with the rookies, that's really tough to do. But Faker has been impressive before, leading these new players to pretty high highs. So it's clear that he's been able to do it again. And it's tough, obviously. The whole team is not Faker. He's got 4 other people. He has a whole infrastructure behind him. But we do know he is a bit of an in-game leader. And the team T1's obviously been built around him for a long time. So it has to be considered.
Oh, absolutely. And like the fact that I mean, there have been so many different points in his career that you've had conversations of like, oh, like is he going to be done? Like how much longer is he going to keep playing? Oh, like maybe other mid laners are better than him now and everything. And he just like, his longevity is just one of those things that consistently shows his quality and how good of a player he is overall. Like the fact that he's able to so consistently just be there year after year after year, have down times where his team around him or the meta or whatever it is just not clicking as well. And to be able to have that dedication and determination to just like come back out on top like the next year or the next split, it's pretty fun to watch. And so we have LCK playoffs that are gonna be going on over the next couple weeks. So we'll get to see how that shakes out in that playoff format now too, against the top of the table. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure T1 got seeded into the semifinals. They have the bye through the quarters.
Them and Gen G did.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Damwon Gaming 3-0'd Brion, and then we have some of the other matches coming up as well. But yeah, LCK's like actively in their playoff run. I think that's going to bring a lot of great matches. Specifically looking forward to the T1 matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are going on this weekend and probably into next as well. But yeah, we're gonna have so many games from so many regions with all the playoffs kicking off.
Yeah, so we'll have the Dragon X versus Kwangdong Freaks tonight, going into tomorrow for the other quarterfinal match. Then on Saturday and Sunday, so I guess like very early morning Saturday and very early morning Sunday of this weekend, we'll have the semifinals, and then next weekend we'll have the finals. So,
gotcha. Okay, so 2 more weeks.
Yeah, this and next week. So it's gonna go by very, very quickly. But looking forward to some really quality LCK series in the playoff run here for them. LCS, we had. I mean, we're getting there towards the end of the season now. I forget how many weeks we have left in the regular season.
Pretty sure this is the last weekend.
This is okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be getting towards playoffs. We've still got C9 at the top of the table, even though they dropped a game to TSM this past week. TL is still just 1 game back from them. So, and then 100 Thieves has put on a really solid run here over the last couple of weeks. So they've put themselves in a solid 3rd position on the table for the LCS. So I'm not sure if there were any points that you had regarding LCS really in general. I know that there was, and I don't want to really talk about it because there's not any news of what it was, but Peter Zhang being removed from TSM with some sort of conflict that was addressed by the league, by the LCS commission. So I don't really care to get into things that we don't have any information on. But
yeah, I know nothing about that. But it was interesting that they were able to pick up a game, being that they've had such a fucking struggle this split. They've really been on the rocks. So it's clear that whatever they're working on behind the scenes, hopefully it's like doing pretty well for them. But yeah, they were able to pick up a game, so that's a positive. But yeah, it seems like TSM still has a really long way to go.
They do, for sure. But I do appreciate that the teams that are at the bottom of the league, I like that we don't have any like fucking 0-15 teams right now, or anyone that's just getting like dumpstered on constantly. We have, I mean, the bottom 3 teams, we've got 2 4-11 teams and a 5-10 team. And although that's by no means like good in terms of like overall win percentage or anything like that, like no one's getting just like dumped on week after week.
Right. They're not like free victories just over and over again, which I would agree is fun. But I think there's going to be some more interesting matches to be had once we get into the best of 5s, and then we'll really see what these teams are doing.
Yeah.
Because the best of 1s have been interesting this past week, but I'm curious to see where picks like the Vigar and the Tristana are going to land once we get into the best of 5s, because they were a little bit flavor of the week. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think that there's been kind of a shift in a little bit of things. Teams are letting the Zeri through now that I think there were a couple of balance changes made to that pick. So now I feel like we're seeing a lot of that along with the Jinx coming through. It's not getting like permabanned as much. The Hecarim is definitely something that I want to keep an eye on as well, because that jungle pick seems to just be really, really strong still, which is why it's getting
the best jungler right now.
Yeah, so consistently getting banned out and all. So that's an interesting thing. I think picks and bans are going to be like just something to keep an eye on, especially like you said in those best of fives as we're getting into the playoffs and all. So.
But yeah, being that we're not in the we're still leading up to playoffs right now. I haven't been staying that tuned in. But yeah, I think one note I do want to make coming up to the end of the season is like I probably said this last week too, just big wrong about C9. They were able to really pull a good split together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what all these top teams are going to do.
Yeah, and it'll be really interesting to see them, whichever team makes it out of North America at MSI. I'm very curious to see what ends up happening there. I think that we have some solid talent, but whether or not we'll be competitive on the world stage is a completely different story. So I think we've got some excitement to wait on and kind of see, but yeah, playoffs coming up next weekend, I believe, for the LCS. I think they run right into it after wrapping up the regular season this week. So that'll be fun to see. For the LEC, we do have playoffs for them starting up this weekend as well. So we've got three different matchups going on this weekend. We've got two winners bracket matchups, one between Rogue and Misfits, one between Fnatic and G2, and then we have a losers bracket matchup for Excel and Vitality.
Nice.
So a couple of good series that I think we'll get to kind of check out, see where teams are shaking out after they've had a kind of long break since their regular season ended.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit. It feels like a little bit since we've really got into the LEC. But yeah, now with the playoffs coming up, and again we see the losers bracket, which is really fun. Give a team the chance for redemption if they get knocked out up in the first round. So that's pretty fun. But yeah, I don't think I've paid too much attention overall to the LEC. But yeah, always looking forward to the playoffs. They're fun.
Definitely. And especially with having two teams starting out in the losers bracket, I think that's an interesting style to kind of set it up. I appreciate the looking at different setups for the playoff format and everything. So
yeah, to see what's the most competitive, what makes what brings out the best series.
Definitely. I think the best thing for League and as a whole is just to have some really good quality matchups and games and series. So looking forward to that. But to get to kind of the meat and potatoes, or I guess the meat to our potatoes of LCK, we've got the LPL. I
was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I didn't want to diss on the LCK by saying that the LPL is like the bread and butter or anything, but I did watch the Victory 5 and FPX matchup, which was kind of interesting because you see V5 falter a little bit in that series. In game one, they were down big to FPX. They were really multiple times in a position where I just fully expected them to lose the game. They had multiple times where it was like a 4v2 with Rookie and whoever defending the Nexus and just trying to hold down the fort. And they were able to hold off long enough for their team to come back and just get one of those late game team fights to actually wrap that game up and send it with a 1-0 lead into game two. And the thing that I thought was it was interesting because throughout that game, V5 was consistently losing team fights, losing objectives. They were getting behind, but they were never losing hard enough to take them out. And I was impressed by kind of their, it's going to sound cheesy, but perseverance throughout that matchup because
Sure.
going into game 2, FPX got beat pretty hard, like in that game 2 by V5, and they just seemed like demoralized in the way I was watching it, from being like, oh yeah, we've got this in the bag, we're beating them consistently. They're like, we're winning. Wait, we lost. And to go into game 2 right after that, in that matchup, they just seemed so like flustered and kind of off their game after putting in a really, really solid game 1 performance. So the fact that V5 kind of had the opposite, they were like, yeah, we're down, but like they haven't killed our Nexus yet, and to the point that they end up turning it around and then just carrying that momentum forward. That's a scary thing for playoffs. A team that has that kind of mental to not to bend but not break and then bounce back so strong. I think, I mean, obviously V5 is a good team. They're the top of the LPL on the standings, and also not
Right.
to say that they're like a underdog team or anything like that. But I think that is part of what really has put them where they are in those standings.
Sure, and there's nothing wrong with not demolishing every game. Like there have been great teams in the past where you look and you say like, yeah, they may falter in the early game, but they have this uncanny ability to find that fight at the end of the game and bring it back. Oh, they've been down 5K before, win the team fight, blah blah blah. Like there's something to be said for teams understanding what it is to be in the losing position and the moves you have to make to like come out of it. And
Yeah.
then that speaks to the infrastructure as well, and the self-talk within the team of like, okay, we lost game 1. How are we going to bring it back? They did this in the pick and ban. Let's do that. You know, finding ways and knowing how to bring you and your teammates back, I think, is a core part of being a competitive team. And this series, like you were alluding to, was a great example of that.
Yeah, and I think that like the teams that have that ability, and I thought this was like a unique thing to me as well watching this, because I feel like in so many instances, teams that have good quality players who get behind play things out a little differently than what I felt like I saw from V5. I feel like in a lot of instances, and I'll use Cloud9 as a prime example, when they are they have had many years with good quality players where they go into international tournaments and they get down early, and their solution is, let's fight every single fight. Let's fight every single objective. Let's just go, 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 go. And like one of these might coin flip in our direction, and then we're like back in it. And I felt like V5 didn't really do that. They kind of like were still very. I mean, they were forced into positions to fight and things like that, but they were very like considerate in a way of like what they needed or needed to avoid doing in that way, to the point that they were losing these fights and ending up with 2 guys left on the map, but it was the 2 guys that they needed that had the wave clear or had the potential to get a pick or whatever it was that deterred FPX from trying to finish that game. They didn't just push until they were like, well, at least we tried and we lost. They were like very selective about the moves that they made, even from that down position. And so that is going to be like a really important, I think, thing when you're playing against the best teams in the world, because as of right now, if they do not make it to MSI, at the way things are looking, I do expect them to be at the World Championships at the very least. So
Sure.
in that international competition, because that really is what all of this eventually comes down to. I think that is such a huge characteristic as a team to have, because
Yeah, I agree.
you just won't be able to get down and be losing, even if it's a good team, and just be like, okay, we lost. Like
Right.
they're never out.
Yeah, and it speaks to likely their practice strategies as well, where they're not just like FFing the first chance they get and going to the next. They're likely playing out these losing scenarios and, you know, figuring out what they got to do to bring it back. So yeah, like I think your main point, you're right. That's fucking terrifying from a team.
Yeah, like I would not. I mean, I wouldn't want to play against them because they got a really solid lineup anyway. I
Right.
definitely don't want to play them after seeing kind of their mentality on how they can play through these losing scenarios and kind of bring it back. So
But yeah, V5 had some great games this past weekend. But I think overall we're going to see a lot of good games out of the LPL
yeah,
from the playoffs. You know, obviously the last world champion Chinese squad, so high level of competition over there, and yeah, just really looking forward to seeing them duke it out.
absolutely. So lots of good matchups in the League of Legends. But Justin, I know that you had a couple of things that you really wanted to get to with Magic. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hold us up. I want to hear
Oh
your
yeah.
thoughts. I want to give plenty of time for you to dig as far in as you want into these topics and all.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate that. I don't know how deep in the weeds we have to get, but I just have some thoughts, and it's taken a good amount of Magic. So I guess somewhere in here there's a rows of like I've gotten the chance to play a lot of Commander. That's pretty fun. Um, but there are some like trends arising that I've been noticing, and they're not the best thing. And as I was telling Aaron before this, to not be so like critical or ranty or whatever. I can frame it in a like a constructive conversation here. But overall, the one thing I want to talk about is resource denial in any game where you have opponents. Part of it is making your opponents have a harder time playing the game or make them not able to play the game to win. Ultimately, Commander is a game where somebody has to win, and starting with that as a like core principle, I think some of the players aren't understanding, or they're understanding too much. And I'm specifically talking about my home play group. But what's interesting is like there's some cards that are showing up that are like just really fringe and weird and aren't like thematic or Vorthosy. They're just oppressive type cards. So things that I'm thinking of are Back to Basics, Stranglehold, like Land Hate cards, Possibility Storm, Uba Mask. These are cards that have shown up in our play group that are like kind of oppressive, and if anything, just make a game longer. Now, with that stuff being said,
Well, here, let me clarify real quick. So
mm-hmm.
they are not necessarily cards that are in someone's deck to help them win. It's more so to make life difficult for everyone else, and then through that potentially, because like the way you're framing this, it sounds like these cards are like a nuisance to have, and they're frustrating to have in the game because they just make it more difficult without actually being a win condition for the person who's playing them. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is insanely accurate.
Okay.
Or at least to the opponent, i.e. me, it's not explicitly obvious like how this fits into your, your 99 card deck. Where, yeah, I get it, it's in your colors and you can play that, but it just seems like a weird choice, especially now. Now, that is also with the caveat of these are cards being played in quote-unquote casual games where we're not doing our pick and ban. People are just saying, like, here's the deck I'm playing tonight, and it's like, oh, okay, like, that's fine, but I'm playing, like, 2 kill spells, a board wipe, and a counter spell. Like, if I'm playing against Back to Basics and, like, land destruction, like, I want to be prepared for that. And therein was my whole reasoning for, hey, let's have these limited amount of decks, so overall, like, we can know what the deck lists are, and, like, we're effectively playing the same game. I think what's happening is, under the guise of just, like, playing casually, oh, I just built this deck, oh, these are just cards I have, we're, like, being weirdly, like, spiteful in the way that we're deck building. And then there's the element of, like, so then when the effect hits the board, actually, then it's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, oh, it's like, well, just don't put it in the deck then.
Yeah, if you're that's weird. If you're apologizing for, like, the play, like, that, for one, like, if you're playing and you're like, hey, like, this is the deck I brought, we're playing to win, like, that there should be no apologies for, like, what cards you're playing. Right. But from the other side of it, like what you said, them not having, like, thematic or fitting into the deck, really, that is odd, because, like, I'm sure, especially from your perspective, now that you've gotten more and more gameplay in the format and all, looking at those things, I'm sure you see that card and you're like, you have a card that pushes you to your win condition way better than that could fit in, that you're like, you're putting that in not because it's the best card to get you to what your deck's trying to do. And so, like, that, I'm assuming that's, I guess, what you mean, more like thematic, where it's like with your your decks, like, you're
like weirdly reactive.
Yeah, your decks are there, like, primarily you're like, this is my goal. I'm going to make a fuck ton of tokens and then hit this thing that's going to be like, these tokens kill you. And, like, right. Or, oh, I'm going to, like, try and pull cards so that I can get these 2 cards that have this reciprocating effect that drains your life or gives me life or whatever. Like, these are cards that are just being played that they're like, they don't do any of that. They just make everyone else's lives difficult, but they don't get that person closer to their end goal. And that's, like, right. To a certain degree. And especially when you guys have been playing with these decks for a while and you see these shifts or changes in the decks where you're like, that other card was a better fit for your deck.
Well, and I don't know what's coming out for these cards.
Fair.
Are they really new, or are we just seeing them for the first time? But, like, here's the caveat is I'm seeing them more now that 3 new players are in our play group that all are bringing, like, Wizards of the Coast pre-constructed decks.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane feel bads to get hit with a back to basics when you're playing just casual, out-of-the-box commander that is, like, all of the cards are just fun and flavorful and whatever.
Yeah, like, I mentioned to you a couple weeks back that I was at Target and I saw there was, like, a vampire deck and some other stuff, and I was like, right. That looks interesting. But none of the themes, like, really, like, caught my eye. But maybe they do for someone, and they're, like, just trying to learn the game.
Exactly. And I think those are some of the players. Well, there are 3 players like that in our group, but they're being met with these, like, really, really hard to deal with cards that are, like, overall not that fun. especially in the case of like I would much rather just have you win the game and just do another one, especially when it's all just in the spirit of having fun. Like
Yeah.
none of us are pushing for, you know, the pick and ban and like lots of counter spells. We're not doing that, but at the same time, I'm feeling like, okay, well, I have to have all of these answers up if players are going to play these like really obnoxious cards and basically just lock people out. Now, I would like to also second this with, hey, I'm not opposed to stacks. I'm not opposed to combos. I'm not opposed to counter magic. My whole thing that I'm trying to get at here is I just want to make sure everybody's on like the same level playing field.
Yeah.
And it feels odd where we're having these games and conversations about cards and decks and power levels, but weirdly enough, the intention is still like, oh yeah, I'm bringing this deck that just like hates out blue and destroys islands and like counters things. And it's just like, is that thematic, or are you just playing cards that are good in like 1 versus 1 Magic? Because there's a big difference between 4-player and 1 versus 1.
Oh yeah, because you
So,
can just crush out an individual person like
well, and that's the
so
point. You're
easily.
just looking to win the game, but there's this sense in which like we're trying to spend a little bit of time together, maybe, you know, feel bads of locking people out. Like that's not really cool. You want everybody to be playing.
Well, those people are going to stop wanting to play if they're
Right.
new to it too. It's like
Right. And
not.
that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's not something that's going to be create like enjoyable environment for those people who are like testing the waters with their $40 pre-made deck that they bought.
Right.
So I get that too, because like I think it's great that you're building this like group and all, that you guys have been able to grow it a little bit, add some more people. That's exciting. Like that's really cool, because you get more faces. Say one person can't make it, you don't have to have a 3-person commander day. You could still have like 5 guys that show up, and then you just
Right.
rotate out 1 person each time and get some
Right.
good games in nonetheless. So
And yeah, so it's not that I'm against these strategies. It's just we seem to be playing them just willy-nilly without much thought. And just to give you a sense of like I think how much not paying attention is going on there, just to like help frame this a little bit, is one of the decks one of the decks has a life gain element to it, and halfway through one of the matches, this player was asked, oh, do you have this XY combo in the deck? Because that would be really nice to know about. And he was like, oh, you know, I'm not sure. And, you know, he is historically against combos and he hates games to win that way. And he really likes just seeing everybody do their thing and blah, blah, blah. Not 5 minutes later, that same XY combo comes out of his deck as he's casting it. It's like, oh, I forgot this was even in here. Like, oh, I pulled this out of a pack. Like, I didn't even buy it. And it's like, okay, that's not the point. I don't care how you got a card. I don't care how much the card was. Effectively, like, you fucking lied to us.
yeah.
Or, and this might be worse, you hold beliefs and then go and do a contradictory action, and then like you're confused when people are like pointing at you and saying, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of weird stuff going on like that, and it's just like,
Well, yeah, like if you're asked that question and you legitimately are like, I just threw this deck together and like I can't remember all the cards that I put in it,
Right.
you could be like, it might be, I think I have those cards, so it might be, but I can't remember what's in my deck.
And
like
his answer was nothing like that. It
Yeah.
was, oh, I'm not a fan of combos. I try and keep those out of my decks, and then he won with that, like that very combo. It's just like, man, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay. I'm okay. If you want to play that, that's fine. But like, I would like to know about that in a
Well, yeah.
competitively or like respectful fashion.
Right, because
know?
you guys all are a group of friends that are like just looking to like yeah, everyone wants to win. Like that's part of a
Sure.
game. Like it's like any game night. Like if you get together with a bunch of your friends and you're like, yeah, we're playing fucking Monopoly. No one's going into it like I just want to have fun. Like people want to
Right.
win. Like even if it's something like that. So like you're expecting people to be trying, but you don't want to have like a weird scenario like that. Um,
And like basically the comparison that I'm trying to make here is, or the image I'm trying to paint is, I want, if we're all showing up to do battle, I either want everybody to have wet noodles, or everybody has knives, or everybody has swords, or everybody has guns, whatever it is, but I want everybody to have at least the same caliber of weapon is what I'm getting at.
I
Right?
would
You want
hate to show up to a gunfight with a wet noodle.
That'd be unfortunate. That'd be really unfortunate. And that's just what it feels like sometimes. So that's kind of what I'm getting to.
Yeah. No, I got you because yeah, I think like your main goal and like I'm sure there are going to be opportunities where it is like just you, Brett, Ian, and like whoever else that like you guys can play some more competitive and some more like fucking
Right.
nitty gritty kind of games. But if
We
you're
just have to be
having
more mindful.
yeah, if you're having like this whole group and you're trying to get like everyone involved and everyone to have a good time, then like there has to be a little bit of acknowledgement that that is a like parallel goal of that
Right.
kind of night.
Right. No,
Um,
that's a good point. And a lot of this is on me. I could easily be bringing it up more, having the conversation more. But I think that's why I'm bringing it up here on
well,
the
yeah,
show, is because
because
it's something that I'm going to look to change here moving forward. And
yeah,
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I just want everybody to be like able to have a good time. I don't want to say no, you can't play these cards, but like let's just play them in the appropriate location or the appropriate pod. That's all.
or yeah, exactly. It's like and I think that you are tactful enough to be able to like express that without it being like a problematic thing. To just be like, hey guys, like it's awesome that you have these cards that are like you're like using them to win and all, and like I'm all for competition and everything. We just have to scale the level of competition to make it appropriate for the whole and not just
Right.
one segment.
Right.
And so I think that that's like a good thing, and I think it's good that you are kind of as like one of the leaders of this group that's kind of like in terms of like organizing it and like
Yeah.
trying to consistently get people together. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you're the fucking team captain and like telling everyone what to do.
When I say assemble, they show up.
Like but I think that your awareness of that and like wanting to encourage everyone to enjoy their time and all to be there, like if I fucking showed up with like the cards that I have and I had thrown together a commander deck and all, and then I like drove myself down to play in the play group and everything and just got fucking dumpstered on, like I would be like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this again.
Well,
Like,
and not just dumpstered on, like, oh, you have to sit here, but you don't get to play, really.
Yeah.
Like, that's what these cards say.
Like,
You
up,
still have to
draw
sit
a
here,
card.
but you don't get to play.
Go fish next.
Right, right. Yeah, it's rough. And like I said, they have their home, they have their place. I respect them. I'm
Yeah.
not,
No,
whatever.
I get that. You just want there to be like some like a level playing field for the group that's there.
Right.
And that can change pod to pod, week to week.
There you go. And I think you just hit the key part, is it's not a conversation that you can have once. It's got to happen every single time and say, hey, what kind of game are we trying to engender? And then also players have to be mindful of other players' decks and know like, oh, okay, he's not bringing $1,000 5-color bullshit. It's like $40
Right.
Walmart shelf, and like we got to be mindful of that. But yeah, I've come down a bit on my criticalness of it. But yeah, it's there's some stuff that is kind of unreasonable and
Well,
should be changed.
I think that's a good thing to like kind of talk it out too, because like I think it's very easy to get like kind of on a one track mind about things
Very.
sometimes for myself and like lots of people, and so it can be easy to like kind of spiral hyper fixating on that thing instead of
Mm,
necessarily like talking it out. And like you said, you're like, it's okay to have these cards, it's okay to play them,
mm,
we just have to be playing them in a game where it makes sense to play them and
right.
not in games where the dynamic doesn't fit.
Right. Because
So
it's going to skew really bad in one direction or the other, and people are going to be left like scorned, and that's not cool.
well,
But,
yeah, and then
yeah.
there'll be people like yourself that are like have a number of decks, and you're trying to play decks that are going to engender a neutral kind of environment for
Oh,
those new
yeah.
people, and then there's someone who's just like not, and you're just like, well, my effort to make this like an even playing
Right.
field
And then I
is
get spiteful. I'm like,
invalid.
well, let me just play my combo deck and just like beat you faster than you think is reasonable.
Yeah,
Let's play that game
it
then.
just
And then
becomes
it's
a fucking arms race.
right, right.
Yeah,
We're not trying to like we've kind of already been there. Like we're not.
yeah,
I don't think we're trying to do that again.
I gotcha.
But yeah, we're once again. I'm talking too much. Let's
No, no, I'm hoping to. I just hope for the next couple of weeks and everything, as you or whenever you're able to get more games played with the Commander 9 group and your pod there and everything, to hopefully hear some positive kind of shift in, or at least a shift in the right direction with
sure.
kind of the things that you're looking for. So no, I don't think you've talked too much or anything, but I appreciate you kind of doing that, because I think we were able to maybe um, think through it a little bit and maybe give you a little bit of some different thoughts that might be helpful when you're talking
Oh
to the
yeah, for
group
sure.
about everything. So
Yeah, yeah, no, this has been very helpful. I'm happy to have the space to do it. But yeah, let's run through the flavor of the week real quick. Aaron, what do you got for us?
sounds good. So, for my food this past week, honestly, my flavor of the week is a little short, but I had some pretty good teriyaki shrimp Chinese food this past week. It was something that I branched out from my typical, if I'm getting Chinese in a group, I always try and get something that's like kind of unique, that like is shareable, that like people will like. But if I'm getting Chinese by myself, I typically am just like, I get sesame chicken and that's it. So it was like just branching out a little bit from my like, I got Chinese by myself. I was like, I'm gonna try something new a little bit and do that. So I enjoyed that. Part of the reason that I did get it was because we had gotten brunch with Colleen's family for some birthdays earlier in the day. Her dad and brother's birthday were celebrating, and I had ordered something with shrimp in it that morning, and they ran out of shrimp when I ordered it. So they like came back to the table and were like, "Sorry, no more shrimp." And I was like, okay. So I was in a shrimp mood, so that's part of why. But I did enjoy
Nice.
it very much. The teriyaki shrimp was good. For my music, with getting out with this beautiful weather that we've started to have, I got out for a run and I decided to throw on my college running playlist a little bit, which has my throwback Eminem, some Hobson, some Tech Nine, And so my music this week is actually Tech Nine because like I don't know why, but I don't know what it is about his style and his music, but like it slaps, man. I enjoy it. Like it's not something that's like my casual daily listening kind of music, but when I listen to it, I always enjoy it. And I just found myself as I was on this run just being like, I haven't heard this song in a while, but I'm bopping along.
Nice.
So that's my music for the week. And my show, Colleen and I just wrapped up Love is Blind Season 2, which is something that I kind of dragged out because I was like, I can only watch so much drama at a time. I can't binge that kind of show really. But it like, some of the stuff like stuck with me. I was like laying in bed after we finished it, and I'm just like that fucking guy sucked. Like it was just stuck in my head. So it's one of those things where it's like it may not be the most like valuable show in the grand scheme of things, but it was very entertaining, and I enjoy having some of the kind of drama trash TV stuff on occasion to mix it up from my usual viewership of like action-y and superhero-y and whatever else kind of shows. So that was my show for this week. But that's all I got. How about you? What have you been chewing on? I guess we'll start off.
Well, we had some. It's pretty boring, but we had some lunch meat from Shady Maple, a bunch of different kinds.
Oh,
so
that is not you. You started that off so like unenergetically, and then you said Shady Maple. You can't just like drop that in like it's no big deal, but Shady Maple.
Well, let me say this because. Like, my favorite slice of lunch meat is prosciutto ham.
Okay.
And they kind of suck at prosciutto ham. Like, I love...
It's not an Amish thing, man.
Yeah. So, but, like, she's there at the deli aisle. They have it, so she wants to get it. It's like, don't get it. It's not good. So I've been tearing through the honey roasted turkey. That's amazing, obviously. Their rolls are amazing, obviously. But yeah, my tone was tainted with my disenjoyment of their prosciutto.
Turkey has always been my favorite lunch
good.
meat. Also, I love that you just instantly called it lunch meat. I have been having this like argument with friends from college of mine for like, it's probably getting close to a decade now that
I don't know what else you would call it.
They're like
sandwich meat.
They call it cold cuts. They
sure.
think but they think they're like it's not lunch meat. Lunch meat sounds disgusting, and I'm like I've called it lunch meat, and so like I'll see a sign in the grocery store that says like lunch meat right above the like fucking Oscar Mayer like whatever. Like section of the refrigerated food, and I'll just send them a picture of it just to like get under their skin. But you just like
here it is,
with
meat.
with no hesitation, you're just like lunch meat, and I love it.
Yeah, cold cuts is for like your grandmom or something. I don't know, but yeah, lunch meat sandwiches are great in my opinion.
Nice.
We were watching Sarah showed me Gangster Squad, which was one of her favorite movies that she's been trying to get me to watch for a while. So we were finally able to cash that one in, and it was pretty good. There's some like ridiculous stuff in it, but overall it was a fun watch. You had Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling getting to oogle each other. But yeah, it was just an all around good time. They had an homage to what felt like an homage anyway to Goodfellas. The tracking shot behind Homeboy when he goes down in the club, he daps the dude up. You know, the table swings over. They did like half of that sequence. And being Gangster Squad, talk about Mickey Cohen and whatever. It's like gang affiliated. I guess that's a more modern term, but. With the mobsters and whatever, there was some interesting stuff going on. I think some of it was trying to pay homage to like the old gangster films that came before it, so it was pretty cool.
Nice.
But then the music I was listening to, and I'll just make one small comment. I know I've been talking about it for forever, but getting my music collection back and organized now on my phone, pretty much literally every song that comes on is a banger because I've picked it. I've been like, I was decisive and I said, you get to stay. So if I'm skipping something, it's just like, oh, I'm not really in the mood for this. But it's not like, oh, this is an actively bad song. Like I had actively bad songs or like
Songs that you didn't even like.
Right. Just like millions of them. So now the whole shuffle is just phenomenal. One of the times I landed on, I think I landed on Element by Kendrick Lamar from Damn. And I was like, oh, I got to just listen to that whole project. So I went back, put it on, listened to it front to back. And dude, I have to say, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. The Duckworth story at the end fucking hit me like a truck again. And I know the story. I've heard the song a bunch of times, but going back and listening to it after I hadn't, I was like, no way. Like, that's so cool. Like, how did that happen? Like, that's so nuts. But I've heard the story a million times before. I know what happened, but that's just the power of the music, man. It is quality. And that as a finale, or depending on which version you have, the opening, it's really, really good. So Damn has been in my headphones. That's my flavor of the week.
Very cool. And I'll have to say, I was chatting with Colleen I think it was after last week's episode when you were talking about wrapping it up, and she's like, does he still use an iPod? And I'm like, he had a Zune. And she's like, what's a Zune? And I'm like, a Zune was the better MP3 player back in the day.
It was only the best piece of tech that ever existed.
It just had worse marketing than Apple and worse backing than Apple. And I was like, Justin is a diehard Zune man. And so I had to explain this, that you had like probably all sorts of stuff that you downloaded back in the day that you would fucking rip from LimeWire or wherever else you found it, like YouTube MP3 downloads and all sorts of stuff that you were probably weeding through and getting the best version of stuff that you had. So
my God, it was a lot. But yeah, that's funny because I was a Zune man for sure. But yeah, that's been a pretty good episode here, man. We hit a lot. Yeah. Obviously, we're going long. Any final words here?
No. I just, of course, as always, want to thank everyone for listening. We're looking forward to the upcoming F1 season, putting out lots of content, but also talking about anything and everything that we have week to week. So looking forward to continuing putting that out there for y'all to listen to. And, of course, we appreciate you listening to it. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify. Check us out on YouTube. We will do our best not to miss your comments if you do.
Shout out Andrew.
Shout out to Andrew S. But that's all I got for this week.
Yeah, just want to say thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you so much tuning in every week. It really feels good to see you guys listening. New episodes every Thursday. Check them out. Like you said, Spotify, Google, YouTube. New episodes every Thursday. This is the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
Catch you next time.